Welcome to the Dating After Divorce podcast. I'm your host, Shade Curry, and I believe every divorced woman deserves a romantic relationship where she feels safe, loved, and cherished. You can create the most amazing life after divorce, and I will teach you how. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Dating After Divorce podcast. I have in the studio with me, Rene Washington. I'm going to allow her to introduce herself in just a minute, but she's a part of the Happily Remarried After series / the Remarriage Club series that we're doing here on the podcast of women who have been divorced and are now happily remarried. So we're going to dive right in. I'm going to let Rene introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. I am so excited to be here with Sade and with you. I am Rene Washington. I am a master certified life coach who came to that out of being a retired corporate escapee. And I am also an author. I wrote a book, Take the Trip: 4 Journeys Every Midlife Woman Needs to Live in Purpose and Freedom. And I am a podcast host. I'm launching a podcast in the next few weeks that's called the Midlife Remix. So, and I also do speaking. So all the things, just having fun, living life.
I love that. The Midlife Remix.
Yes.
That is an excellent name. I
I'm
love
so
it.
excited about it. Thank you.
Well, Rene, thank you so much for spending time with us today. I'm excited to get into your divorce and remarriage story because you told me a little bit about it, and I'm so excited. There's just so much wisdom, so much insight, and I'm going to say also so much freedom in your story. So first of all, tell us where you are now in your family life, just the basics about your family.
So my family is me and my husband, Robert Washington, the love of my life, my second husband and final husband. And I also have a sister, 2 nieces, and a brother-in-law, and an aunt, my mom's sister. My mom and dad are both deceased, and my mom's sister lives alone in another state. And so that's the nucleus of my family.
Yeah. And so fun fact about your sister and brother-in-law.
Yeah.
Tell us.
Yeah. So my brother-in-law and my sister met after I married in the course of my marrying my first husband. That's when they got to know each other, and they ended up getting married and have been married for, I think they just had their 30th anniversary. If not 30, it's really close. So yes. And my brother-in-law is amazing because even after the divorce, he has just been a rock for me and always been there for me. So yes, it's been a very interesting journey.
So just to clarify for everyone listening, Rene's sister is married to her ex-husband's brother. Her ex-husband's brother. Yes. So you guys were like a little...
yes.
2 couples that were 2 sisters marrying 2 brothers.
Exactly. And because of that, and I was very intentional about this, that I really connected to 2 families. Because when I married, I married with the intent to be married for life. And when they got married, the 2 families came together. We did holidays together. All of that. We were one big happy family. And when my sister had the 2 girls, they had the children in our family because I don't have children. So yes, it was really interesting, particularly at the point where I knew that I had to leave that marriage, and it wasn't just going to impact me. It was and my ex-husband, it was going to impact my nieces, my sister, the in-laws. It was a whole thing.
Yeah, no, I know a lot of women face that too, where, depending on how the family responds, they feel so responsible for bringing so much pain to so many people in the divorce.
Absolutely.
What do you have to say to that woman who feels like she's responsible for all of these people's feelings about the divorce?
Yes. And so many things can inform that. For me, beside just the family itself, my faith informed that. I'm a Christian, and so there was all of that to deal with. And so what I would say to any woman facing that and considering that, yes, we can make sacrificial choices. And I would just ask you, at what cost? At what cost? Because, in my coaching, one of the things that I will ask women is when they talk about, well, I don't want to hurt their feelings or I don't want to upset them. And my response to that is always, and why is it okay for you to be hurt?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why is that okay?
Yeah. And
I'm not saying I have friends. I have a friend who stuck in a marriage way longer than she wanted to because of the children. I understand, a lot goes into that, and everybody has to make their own individual decision. I have observed that some of the things that we think we're doing on behalf of other people really is not what we think it actually is. That it's not having the impact that we actually would want. So it's very situational, very individual. But the big question I would ask you to ask yourself, at what cost? Because if it's impacting you mentally, emotionally, physically, your health, these are things to think about and really process through, because either direction is going to be painful. Right. So on the other side of it, what will be the best result? Not it's not going to be a painless result, but what will ultimately be the best result.
Yeah. And you talked about, the question you ask your clients, which is, you want to make everyone happy, but at what cost? So I think this is probably a good time to start, for you to tell us a little bit about your divorce journey, because there was a significant cost that you were facing, like when you were contemplating filing for a divorce. You were thinking like, this might cost me my life.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So I'll try to make this as short of a story as possible. But, the decision to leave was not an easy one or a quick one. And even I didn't realize how unhappy I was becoming. When I look back, then I could see where the little signs had started a couple of years before. And I got to this point where I was just deeply dissatisfied with the life. And I was married for 21 years. And I would say that probably around 18 of those years were, I was really happy. So this is not some long journey of pain and suffering. No, I was really happy in my marriage for most of the marriage. But something started, churning inside of me that was confusing to me. I didn't understand it. I thought it was a phase, that I'd get past it. But it didn't. And at that point, I was someone who had not really had any major things happen that were painful in my life. So I felt guilty even feeling dissatisfied. I just felt like I was being ungrateful. And so I didn't talk about it really to anybody. I just kept pushing it down and pushing through until I ended up at my gynecologist and for that annual exam. And I just said to her that I don't know what's going on with me. I feel like I just want to, because I was also dissatisfied in my career, which kind of timeline mirrored the length of my marriage too. Okay. And also had been great most of those years. And so I told her, I said, I want to divorce my husband and quit my job. Now, several months prior to that, I had tried to go to a counselor. She was looking at me like, what you got to complain about? So I kind of slithered out of that office and just went back to trying to just make do. And I would pray and pray and pray. And, I just wasn't getting any answers.
What did that feel like? Like, oh my in gosh. The middle of this, like, confusion? Because sometimes people look at, divorced women. Most of the women that I have worked with, have faced some, like, you could say, permission. They're allowed to divorce. Yes, I have air quotes on because, okay, he cheated on you.
Yes,
he whatever, exactly. All of that. But
Oh my
in your
gosh,
case,
Sade.
there wasn't like an arrestable crime. Let's put it that
There
way.
was not. And that's why I was so silent about it. That's why I felt so guilty about it. He was a good person. So yeah, I mean, there were issues. I mean, there was stuff that was going on for sure. Like, and the dynamic of our marriage basically was that I am a kind of take control kind of person. And he was fine with that. He was fine for me to be the line leader in the relationship. And that dynamic worked for us for so many years until I hit my mid 40s and I just kind of crashed. Like I just couldn't do it anymore. I needed him to be more decisive, to take the lead, take charge, and I was just tired.
Right, because that takes a toll on you. And I know people have talked about the emotional burden that women have in their relationships, where it's like, okay, you're going to help me run this errand, but I have to literally write out all the instructions. Yes. I have to do all the research. Yes. I have to do 4 hours of work in order for you to do 15 minutes. Yeah. And then you can say, hey, I helped you do this. And you're like, it took me longer to help you help me.
Yes.
Kind of a thing.
Yeah. And there are so many narratives that have been set up to divide women. So, I didn't have children. So like that's another reason why, how hard could your life be? Right. But I had a really dynamic career. There was a lot, there were a lot of things. And like I said, it snuck up. I felt blindsided by what was going on internally. I just felt blindsided, like it had come out of nowhere.
How did that feel internally? Like
it felt like I just wanted to disappear.
So maybe numb, like numb,
I just didn't want to have to deal with anybody or explain anything. I just wanted to be by myself.
Do you think maybe you were depressed?
Well, that's when you go to a general physician, or even a counselor, that is always an option that's going to come up. Let me give you and I would always respond, I'm not depressed. Now, I probably was. I don't think I was clinically depressed.
Right.
But I think that I was situationally depressed.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, I can see that because I experienced that during my divorce as well and leading up to my divorce, even though I wasn't planning on a divorce. But the life I was living was just so crushing.
Yes.
That I was just completely numb, devoid of joy. Things that used to bring me joy weren't bringing me any joy. And the interesting thing is that unlike you, I was still like powering through. I was still like, I got this.
Yeah.
So you were a lot smarter.
Well, but I still was, I was still, that was all internal because I was still showing up. I was still doing what I had to do, but it was just the energy that it cost me.
Yeah,
was just tremendous. And so when I ended up in the gynecologist's office and said that to her, she said, okay. And she tested me and she came back and she said, you're in full-blown menopause. And so then I was like, oh, I got something, Yeah. Now I got something I can tag, menopause. That's it. I'll get over it. And she put me on a hormone. I am a reader. I am a reader. So I'm going to start looking for information because I'm an information junkie. So I look up menopause, all the things. And, I found a book on menopause and, a lot of things about menopause are still a mystery. And mostly what you hear are about the physiological changes. So hot flashes, sleeplessness, that kind of thing. Mine was emotional. I didn't have hot flashes. So I found this book, and in the book, it talked about how women, we are the tenders, the frienders, nurturers, caretakers. And then we reach this stage of life where we have been suppressing for years and years and years in the service, suppressing in the service of other people's priorities.
Right.
Our partners, our children, our community, our jobs. We suppress our desires and priorities in the service of others. And when you get to this stage, it talked about how what you've been suppressing has to be dealt with. And I say what has been suppressed must be addressed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it doesn't mean that every woman is going to have to get a divorce. It just means that your relationships need to be renegotiated because you are shifting. And so, and that's the relationship with a partner, but also your children, your friends, everybody, because you are shifting into a new phase. And if the people in your life can come to the table and renegotiate, then they will remain in your life. But if not, they may go. And that's what happened to me. And not so much, again, my ex was not a bad person. It was just that he was who he was and he was not going to change.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even fair of me to ask that of him.
Yeah. I love that word, renegotiate relationships.
Yes.
Because, think about it. Many of us get married at 20, 21, and somehow we expect ourselves to stay the same.
Exactly.
For the next 50 or 60 years.
Yeah. And,
it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't, and we, most of us get married, and I think we're not fully developed in all the ways until you're 30. And so a lot of us get married younger than that. And I say marriage is somewhat of a lottery, because if you get married, particularly at a younger age, you're counting on the fact that you both will grow together in the same way.
Or stay exactly the same.
Yeah,
one or the other.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's why the 50-50 divorce rate, because 50% of marriages end because that's a crapshoot.
Yeah.
So, and my friends laugh at me because I always say, when we were in church, they would recognize couples who have been married for 50 years, 60 years, and they would have them stand up. And I tell my friends, I say, look at the woman.
Do you wonder exactly how divorced women just like you are meeting eligible men who want a real relationship and a commitment? They're doing it by dating with their core values. Your core values are the GPS that lead you to the partner you've been looking for. When you use your core values on dating apps, text messages, and at social events, you will easily connect with your true match partner without chasing, settling, or wasting time with non-committal men. I have taught exactly how to do this in the 2-hour Core Values Dating Blueprint course available on my website, shadecurry.com/dating. That's SADECURRY.com/dating. You will learn exactly how to identify your core values and use them on your dating profile, how to ask the right questions via text, and how to tell the right stories on dates, so that you attract the right people and repel those who aren't right for you. If you're ready to meet your true match, hop over to shadecurry.com/dating or click the link in the show notes. Now back to the episode.
Look at her eyes.
Is she smiling?
Yeah, is she smiling? Because he's smiling. Is she smiling?
Yeah, no, but that's really important because when I look back, I got married really young. I think I was 21, almost 22. And in many ways, I wasn't a healthy person. I didn't come from a necessarily healthy situation, like relationships in my family of origin were not healthy. So I wouldn't say that I was healthy. I think I was more codependent, abandonment issues, that kind of a thing. And I married someone who was on the other side of the spectrum, avoidant, narcissistic. So you could say we were, quote unquote, equally unhealthy when we got married, just on different ways. And then as time went on, I grew. Like I was growing and changing. Like, okay, this is what it looks like to raise kids. I was doing all of that work.
Yeah.
And then much later, I started setting boundaries. And what was interesting was that I was getting healthier by trying to set boundaries, by trying to have a healthier family. And he was in most ways staying the same or getting worse. And I think at a certain point, he was just like, lady, I cannot deal with these boundaries. I have to be able to treat you like I want. And if not, I'm out. So I love that sense of you have to think about the changes that are going to come along the way when you're getting married and even remarried. Like,
yeah, exactly.
You're marrying someone at 40. Who is he a caregiver? Could he be a caregiver for you at 70? Can you be a caregiver for him at 70? If you don't want to care for someone, maybe don't get remarried.
Yes.
But that long-term view.
Don't get married in reaction to the first marriage. I tell people, women that too, because whatever the issue was in that first marriage, if you keep that as the focus and the standard, you're just going to remarry and end up with somebody who has a completely different issue.
And you'll miss that issue.
Yeah. So, you need to really clean the slate and focus in on what do I want?
Right.
Not in relation to this first relationship, but just in relation to me. Like you said, at this stage of life, what do I want? What's important to me? And let those things be the standard. And, when you're talking about how you got married, I was 24. And, this is how I got married. I was dating my first husband, and he lost his job, had to move back in with his parents. And we would talk, and that was back way before cell phones and all that. So we were talking on the phone every night, and his parents didn't like that. They were like, and so I said, because, I was Miss Take Charge. Well, you can just move in with me.
Oh.
Well, when he moved in, I said, now we can't live in sin. So if we're going to live together, we have to get married.
Wow.
That's how I got married. It wasn't, I orchestrated all of that. I orchestrated all of that. So, what God puts together. And I came to the realization, did God really put this together, or did I put it together?
Wow.
And then the other thing, though, is that I do believe good can come out of things, because, again, my sister and his brother ended up together. They are still together, still happily married. And I have 2 beautiful nieces that I adore. So maybe my marriage was for that purpose.
And the sun is still shining too.
Exactly.
The sun is still shining. People are still breathing air. It's okay.
Exactly. But you started out asking me about how it ended up.
Right. I want to get back to your story from menopause. Yes.
Yeah. So a few weeks after that diagnosis, I had a mini stroke. I had gone over to my best friend's house for dinner. Me and my husband had gone over there, and something just overcame me. And it was just so heavy on my mind what to do about this marriage. And while we were there, I just kind of burst into tears. And they were like, what's going on? What's wrong? And I only shared it with my best friend. But I made the decision to stay in my marriage. I was like, okay, I'm just going to stay. I'm not going to get a divorce. And a few days after that, I got up that morning to go to work, and I had a little thing in my eyes, but with my vision, but it was like fleeting. So I just kept getting ready, got in my car. My husband had already gone. I was at the house by myself. I got in my car, I called a girlfriend to leave a message, and my words came out garbled. I just kind of laughed and thought, oh, that's odd. And I said, I'm going to call you back. So I tried to call her back, still couldn't leave a good message, get to work. The person in the next office next to me, I tried to talk to him. I said, I know he thought I was drunk. I couldn't get the words out. Wow. That's when I knew something was wrong. Thankfully, we had a nurse office. But I was I was in the building down the hill from the main building. I get back in my car and drive myself up the hill, which I know now was crazy. And by the time I get to the health office, they check me out. And while I was there, I started feeling like myself again. Like, okay, well, this was just something weird, and she'll just tell me to go rest or something. She came back and said, you're in the midst of having a full-blown stroke. I've called the ambulance, and we're taking you to the hospital. And I was like, I'm not getting in an ambulance. All the paramedics came in, and my sister and I work at the same company. She was there. My best friend was there. And my best friend was like, I'll drive you. And the nurse is like, nope, you are not driving her. She's getting in this ambulance. And I get in the ambulance. Even the ambulance driver said, did you just party too hard this weekend? Because you look fine. I mean, he was kind of like, you look fine. I felt fine. But I got to the hospital. The neurologist said, yes, you're in the midst of having a stroke. And they admitted me. I was in the hospital for 5 days. I had no triggers for stroke, no diabetes, no high blood pressure, not overweight. They couldn't figure out why I had the stroke. And when I was laying on that gurney, I knew.
It was the emotional stress.
Yeah, I've got to leave my marriage.
So just to walk back on the timeline, you're happily married for 18 years or so. Somewhere in the next couple of years, you start feeling all this strain, like something's wrong.
Yeah.
You go to a counselor. The counselor is like, your life is fine. And dismisses you.
Yes.
That is not a good counselor, ladies. Listening. If the counselor dismisses your experience, please keep trying and find the right one.
And I eventually did. I eventually did find a good one. So yes, keep trying.
The counselor dismisses you, then you just let everything go. Then you finally end up at your wellness check. Your gynecologist says you're in menopause and you're like, oh, this is what's causing all my problems. And so you decide to stay in your marriage. You're still feeling it, but you're like, I'm going to stay.
Yeah.
And when you make that final decision to stay, you have a stroke. Because that's not how that story is supposed to turn out. Right? You're supposed to decide to stay, and then you get $1 million.
Exactly. Yes. And that's really what it felt like. What is going on? I'm trying to do the right thing.
Right. Wow. Yeah. So what happens next?
So after that, I go back home and I, start looking for all these ways to save my marriage. Even though I knew I needed to leave, you just really I need absolute confirmation. I need a voice to come down from, And so I found a counselor for us to go to. I found another counselor for me to go to. I found a counseling weekend for us to attend because I had to know that I had done everything I could.
Yeah.
And then so that happened in September that I had the stroke. And then by February of that next year, I knew I couldn't. I had done all I could do. Everything. And so my last gasp try was, I said to him, I'm going to get an apartment for 6 months. And I didn't say all of this to him. Some of this I said to myself in my mind. I'm going to get this apartment. And when I actually physically leave, that's when I'll know, oh, you've just messed up. You've made a horrible mistake. Go back, or it's time to go. And so that's what I did. I found an apartment and I wanted it to be for 6 months. There's a story connected to that about how that all worked out too. But I found this apartment, perfect apartment. The lease was 6 months. I knew what I wanted to spend on the apartment. I didn't want to spend more than $600. That's what the rent was. And so it all because to my point about, I'm a person of faith and so I had to just hone in on, it's me and you, God.
Right.
I can't, because, I had friends try to, take me out to lunch and try to talk me out of getting a divorce and all this kind of stuff. And I was just like, it's me and you, God. And I'm going to step and pray and step. If the path doesn't clear, then I know I need to be still or course correct. And that's how I walked it. And so the path kept clearing. I would get blocked sometimes, and then the path would reopen for me to keep moving towards leaving. And so when I got that apartment and moved into it, packing up all my stuff, and listen, Sade, within the year before I actually left, I had talked to my husband about, do we want to move into a bigger home? And, what are we going to do about this house? That was when I was still thinking I was happily married. Yeah. And so decided to stay there and just do some renovations. I got new hardwood floors, new countertops, new appliances, paint, all the things. Yeah. And then I got to go.
So you weren't plotting.
I was not.
Any of this. You were nesting.
Yes. And my mother she's like, you just did all this to this house and you're going to leave it? And I was like, yes. And I did. I
It's
left
interesting.
it.
I wonder if, because I can see some of these signs, like now as you're telling the story, like sometimes we're like, we make ourselves even busier to avoid what's going on. We take on these projects. So it's like, no, I'm just not going to look at what's happening over here. I'm going to renovate the house. I'm going to, in my case, become a foster parent. I did all the things.
Yeah. Because, we were going through some financial instability because he was going in and out of jobs. And so when I decided to not move from that home, I did it with the thought, like, I can carry this mortgage.
Yeah.
So I can carry this mortgage. So I'm just going to stay here and do some things to this house.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did all that stuff. And then bam, I'm blindsided, like, oh no, you got to go. And so, yes, the moving was really painful, leaving that house. But when I got to that apartment, I never looked back.
Wow.
I knew I was done. And so from February to July, I was officially divorced in July.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, it was a journey and a process. Mm-hmm. And I just want anybody listening to this to really hear that journey for me was internal.
Yeah.
A few years later, I ended up leaving my career, but all that was internal in my marriage, in the career, what it came around for, because you can look at the external. This person is doing this person is not doing that, or this job is this. What I came to realize is that I had changed. I didn't ask for the change, but it had come. And I had to deal with it. And in the dealing with it, I had to leave some things. I had to leave a person. And so again, that doesn't necessarily happen to everybody, but it can happen to a lot of us. Yeah. And it is all right.
Yeah. And I love that I really wanted to highlight your story. We don't do a lot of like divorce stories on this podcast but your story was just so different. And I was like, there might be someone out there who needed to hear this particular story. Because my story is very similar to a lot of ladies who are married to narcissistically abusive people, blah, blah, blah. Those are the common stories. Your story is just so unique. I really appreciate you taking the time to tell that so that the women who have that unique situation can hear about from someone else who has been through it. Yes. So now we're going to get to why we're really here. Because what we want to know is how you find. You've been remarried now for how many years?
I've been remarried since 2013.
So that's like 8 years. Yeah. So you got remarried you have to be like 54.
Yes.
All right, ladies. Do you hear that? 54 is not an issue.
No.
So tell us about that journey. How did you meet him? Where did you find him? What was that journey like? And I know you have a unique story here
I know,
too.
right? Yeah. Because, a lot of this is about self-judgment and, world judgment. Mm-hmm. And so I really do want women to understand, do what's best for you and don't beat yourself up about how your blessings come. So yes, after I got divorced, friends tried to take me out, we would go to these clubs and stuff, and married men would, try to roll up on me, and I just
let's just pause there with the married men in the DMs. The married men, seriously?
Yeah.
The married men in the DMs is ridiculous. Okay, sorry, keep going. I just had to do that.
Yeah. And at that time, there weren't even DMs. I'm in actual clubs. So and after a few of those outings, I just said, okay, God, I'm good by myself. I would like to meet someone. I would like a partner. I didn't even want to get married again. That wasn't really necessarily a goal for me. It's like, I do want a relationship. And, to my earlier point, I sat down, I wrote out everything I wanted in a man, in a relationship. Mm-hmm. And I just offered it up, and I said, this is what I want. And I expected it to take years to come. Mm-hmm. And I just said, okay, you've got it. I'm just going to, go about living my life. And so 6 months, probably around 6 months after that, It was Christmas holiday weekend, and this couple that I knew, the husband, he was a widower now, and so my husband now I met through my first marriage, because my first husband had a coworker, and I got to know her. We became good friends. She got married not long after we got to know her, to the man that I am now married to.
Wow.
And and so how that all happened was that probably after they got married, Don and Robert got married, and about 6 months after that, she found out that she had a brain tumor. Wasn't given a long time to live, but she was a fighter. I mean, she was just an incredible, amazing woman. And she fought that tumor for about 16 years, multiple brain surgeries. But she kept living life full tilt. She, the company that they worked for, that my first husband and she worked for, she continued to flourish, became an executive. And her husband, he was an FBI agent and got a promotion, a transfer to New York City. So they both moved to New York City and were there for like 20. He ended up living there for about 26 years.
Where were you living at the time?
I'm in Alabama, where they both were originally from.
Got it.
Yeah, I'm in Birmingham, and so we knew them. We knew them as a couple. They would come home for the holidays. We would see them when they came home during the holidays. And my relationship was mainly with her. And, he's a fun kind of guy. I won't use the term, I call him crazy.
Excessively fun.
Right. Yeah, excessively fun. Yeah. And, and he's one of those people that just will say whatever, you just have to be kind of thick-skinned to be around him. And so I would wonder, wow, how does she deal with him? But then the other thing that I would say is, wow, how amazing that he has stuck with her through all of this. Because remember, this happened like 6 months into their marriage.
Yeah.
And I don't know many men. And in fact, he told me much, much later that, her dad and her brother even said, I couldn't have done what you did. But he stuck with her through the end. And she died probably around 43, 44. And I was still married at that time. And I said to my first husband, wow, I feel sorry for whatever woman has to come behind her. She was such an incredible person. Because he's young too. So I'm like, he'll get married again. Men typically get remarried. So, I said, wow, it's just like, whoo, I feel sorry for whoever that woman is. Well, he had come home for the holidays, and we ended up at this New Year's Eve party together. And my divorce was a shock to most of the people because people thought we were the perfect couple, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so when we were at this party, he said, wow, I can't believe that you're divorced. What happened? And then he looked at me and he said, but you know what? You sure do look good. He said, when he said, I didn't really think much about it, because people typically would say that to me when they saw me. It was just like, you're divorced and you should look like, the dregs of the earth. That was just so funny to me. But he said, well, I'm here, for the week. We should go to lunch or go out. And we went out, and that was it. That was it. That was it. He went back to New York. And we had a long distance relationship for about 6 more years.
Wow.
Before he retired and came back home. And he had not planned to do that. He had planned to retire and stay in New York. But New York is my favorite city, but not the weather, not the weather. So I like visiting, but I like coming back to Alabama sunshine. So he decided to come back home. And
so he came back for you.
Yeah, he came back. And even after he came back, it was still a few more years before we actually got married. But in our coming together, there was controversy. he lost a friendship because of the way they were talking about me. His family, his mom and sister, they were, and I knew them, but they did not want us to be together. People accused me of being disrespectful to Donna, his wife.
By dating her widower husband.
Yes, all of that.
That's
and
interesting.
I was uncomfortable too. It was a little weird for me. So it was just a lot. And so that long distance relationship ended up being a good thing because we got to process and work through a lot of junk. And mostly it was around OPP, other people's perceptions.
Other people's perceptions.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a podcast episode on that. Yes. Other people's, I call it other people's opinions.
I know. Other people's perceptions. Yes. And I mean, because within the first year, he asked me to marry him, gave me a ring that I didn't even wear. My girlfriend was like, why are you not wearing that ring? Because I was still like, because you know what, this is the funny thing. For those of us who do petition God for things, when they come, then we're like, we don't trust it. Like, is this it? Because my thing was like, yes, I asked for this God because he checked off everything on my list, except he doesn't like to dance. That's the only thing that he didn't check off. But he checked off everything. And you ask God for something, and then when you receive it, you question it. And but it came so fast. I didn't expect it to come that fast. And I absolutely didn't expect it to come in the form of Robert Washington. He was not even, you have a type. He wasn't even really my type, so to speak. Not somebody that I would have typically been attracted to. It just really caught me off guard in so many ways. And
so you had the fact that it was your friend's husband, your friend who had passed away. It came so fast. You weren't sure. And then did anyone support this at all from the families?
My girlfriends did. The girlfriends that I have that are my true friends, I wouldn't trade them for anything. My sister supported me. It was so weird. I'm a mama's girl. And I mean, and it wasn't until my divorce that the umbilical cord was actually cut because my mom was so upset about my divorce. Like I said, my husband was a good first husband. He was a good, people loved him. He was a friendly, outgoing kind of guy. Yeah. And she just was so upset with me. And my dad, I mean, we had a kind of a prickly relationship. He was the one that supported me and shocked me because when I told them that I was getting the divorce, my dad wasn't surprised and said to my mother, couldn't you see that she was unhappy? That really shocked me that he saw that.
Right. It's interesting for me because I love this because women tend to respond to other people's opinions different from the way men do. And I think this is something that I would love to highlight is Robert, your now husband, he didn't seem bothered.
Yeah, because my husband is very profane. Opinions. He's very profane. So he was just like, F him. Like, even his mom and sister, he laid down the law for them, and really stopped speaking to them for a while. And so, do you
think that's more healthy? Like, do you look back and wish maybe you had been less swayed by other people's opinions?
Yeah, it was definitely a growth process for me. And I am, what it showed me about him was that he was somebody that was going to be there for me.
Right.
Because, when I will hear women, they get into these things about other women and all this kind of stuff. And I'm going to let her know. And and I would always think, why are you focused on the other woman? You should be focused on this man.
Right.
Because that's the constant. You get rid of that woman, another woman can come.
And he's the one you're in relationship too.
Yeah, he's the one that you're in relationship, and he's the one that's not dealing with the situation.
Right.
So, so my thing was, that one, I did observe how he was handling it. And yes, I had, junk I had to work through. And I also, like with his mom and his sister, I didn't personalize it. because I knew it wasn't about me.
Right.
I knew it wasn't about me. So I didn't personalize it. And I just, was like, God, okay, we'll get through this some kind of way. I don't know how. Maybe we won't. But, the blessing of this being a second marriage was that I was older. We were older.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you're younger, the in-law thing
is a big deal.
Yeah. Not so much when you're in your 50s.
Right. Right. We are the adults now.
Yes, exactly.
We're the grown-ups now.
Yes. Yeah. And eventually, years later, I did have the full circle moment with his sister and mom. And so, his mom is now deceased too, but his sister and I, we get along great now. So, and so again, this thing of if you are giving up your happiness to try to please other people.
Yes. It is a waste.
It is a waste. It is a waste.
All right. So tell us what remarried life is like. What kind of fun do you guys get up to?
Yeah. So yes, every day is a holiday with Robert Washington. Those are his words. I was like, it's Valentine's Day. Every day is Valentine's Day with me.
My husband, when I get upset, like he has a way of like making me laugh.
Yes.
Like, no, do not make me laugh right now. I am actually trying to stay upset with you.
I know. Yeah, he keeps me laughing. Yeah, he keeps me laughing. He is such a self-honoring person. He loves himself. And he has taught me a lot about what that looks like and, how you are able to sustain yourself. He's a strong man of faith. So we share that. And, I love how he prays for me and with me. And we pray for each other. And I also love that he is alpha male on steroids, and he respects my need for independence.
Wow. Which just sounds like kind of the opposite of your first husband.
And so, my first husband, he respected my need for independence because it meant that he didn't have to do a lot. So that worked out well for him. The difference here is that, Robert is going to handle his business and our business in ways that allow me to feel cared for and taken care of without my having to feel like I have to be that stereotypical submissive person. That word submissive.
So it's sort of like you take care of your business.
Yeah.
He takes care of his business.
Yeah.
And both of you take care of your joint business.
Exactly.
Which is takes such a load.
Yes.
Off of you. Because there are women who are having to deal with their business.
Right.
The joint business and half of the husband's business.
Yes. And so I am, that I really wanted to release my need to control. It's in me from both parents, but I really wanted to really walk that differently. And with him, I get to do that because yes, I'm going to do what I want to do. And at the same time, I respect him. I respect, his role in this marriage. And I go to him and ask him for advice. I didn't do that in my first marriage. I was still going to my parents, asking them about everything, and so now I'm.
Is that because you didn't want to, or because you weren't going to get good advice?
Well, that just wasn't how my first husband rolled. And it didn't bother him that I would call up my dad and say, what should we do about this? Or call up my mom and ask. That just never bothered him. He was fine with it. And I guess on some level, I didn't respect his opinion, when I just Just,
was his opinion, and it's a harsh question, was his
yeah.
opinion respectable?
When I say happy-go-lucky, he really was a happy-go-lucky guy. If he didn't have to think too hard about something, that was just how he was.
Yeah, it's just a difference in personality.
It was a personality difference. And Robert is very opinionated, and he has, if he doesn't want to weigh in on something, he's just like, I don't know anything about that. I don't, But for me, it is, I'm an information junkie. I know a lot of things about a lot of things. And so I do respect people who know things, and he knows things. He is somebody who knows things. And so I love that I'm with somebody who knows something that I don't necessarily know. That hadn't been my experience.
Yeah.
And so, I love the biggest thing I love about him is conversation. That we can have great conversations. And I love that he lets me fly. Like, he has traveled all around the world. Traveling is not the biggest thing to him anymore. For me, I still got places to go. And so he's fine. Like, I know she's coming back. People are like, is your husband going with you? No.
We'll have to have another conversation about people and their questions. It's interesting to me, and I do have to deal with this with a lot of my clients. We actually essentially they come to me for dating, and we end up having to do a lot of work on boundaries. And I literally had this question with a client this week about the interest that her friends had in her dating life. And it wasn't interest like, hey, I found this for you, I found that for you. It was more like, well, how's it going? And is it working? Is it not working? Oh, you're not doing this right, and you're not doing that right. And just so much interest in other people's internal lives. Yeah. Not necessarily to build the other person up, but to, I don't know, to distract themselves from their own issues.
Yeah.
That can be a thing sometimes.
It can be. And so, that's why I say that my front row circle of friends, yes, they were always very supportive. My mom, praise God, eventually came around to appreciate Robert and like Robert, and wow, because she ended up dying unexpectedly, and that would have been really painful if she had died not understanding some of my journey. And I understood why my mom was upset, and I didn't personalize that either. But it was just another growth opportunity. So the pushback that we had from my mom, his mom, his sister, all of that, it all served to bring us closer together. Yeah. And to really work through, because we tell people that we are both firstborn, controlling people, and so we say, it can get loud up in this address sometimes because
a caveat, controlling in the context in which you're using it is not abusive.
Oh, not abusive. No, controlling it like we like to say what's going to happen about a thing. That kind of controlling. Yeah. Yeah. Like, we're used to running the show, and that people in our families, in our circles kind of see to us too. We're used to that. So, so
you have an alpha male and an alpha female who are like, almost like, I think it's like you're both mature enough to know that none of that means anything really. Yeah, it's just the way you show up in the world.
Exactly. Yeah. This it's kind of inevitable that we're going to kind of butt heads. But what we say is that, yes, we argue, but we argue to resolution, and we argue so much less now. Yeah, the early years were really loud, but but now it's just like, okay, that's you. Let's move on.
That's you. It's like it doesn't have to mean anything about.
No.
Oh my gosh, what an incredible story you shared with us today. Thank you so much for being willing to just put it out there. I know this is going to help so many women who are listening, my ladies who are divorced and thinking about dating and getting married again. And I love that you have this unique story that they can see that it could happen anyway. I'd love to have my audience open up to all the possibilities
absolutely
that it could happen in. I'm like, listen, get a matchmaker, go on a dating app, go to the speed dating, look in your network, go to your, like all the things if you want to do this, because you just never know.
Yeah, stay open to possibility. Yes.
Yeah.
Don't let the shoulds and oughts should you out of the best thing that could happen to you.
Yes. All right. So to wrap up, where can the audience find you if they want to learn more about your work with women? They want to follow you, reach out to you, just kind of spell out your contacts, and I'll also link all of those up in the show notes.
Absolutely. So my website is renecoach.com, renecoach.com. The podcast you can get on the launch interest list is the Midlife Remix.life, the Midlife Remix.life. And you can get my book that tells the story that I shared today and of some others. And it is called Take the Trip: 4 Journeys Every Midlife Woman Needs to Live in Purpose and Freedom. Is available through all the major booksellers, Amazon, Bookshop, Barnes & Noble. So you can get a copy of that. It's at a really good price now. So go get that book.
Awesome. I'm going to get that. So Take the Trip.
Yeah, Take the Trip.
By Rene Washington.
Yes, yes.
All right. Thank you so much for your time today. This is an amazing story. And if you ladies were intrigued by any part of her story, please follow Rene everywhere. That is linked up in the show notes. Thank you for your time and attention today, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, Sade.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thanks for listening today. If you are ready to get married after divorce, I want to invite you to download my free 8-video training specifically designed to help divorced women date with ease and get married again. Head over to sadecurry.com to get started. That's SADECURRY.com. I'll see you inside.